and be doing all of this great work through the Mental Health Association of Monmouth County. Um, our presentation tonight is the financial and behavioral health in the time of COVID-19. And we specifically wanted to do this webinar and this training to speak to women about the unique experiences that we're going through right now. Just from the interest that we had in this group in the first place, a lot of us are struggling. And I think that we can all identify with a lot of the struggles that we feel, whether you're single, you're working from home, you're schooling from home. There's a lot of things that have really caused us some extreme stress, and the situation doesn't seem to be changing that much. And, we want to talk about how we can get through it. And we decided to partner with some financial experts to really talk about the piece of, how do we plan for the future, especially as women, in this climate. There was a statistic actually that came out last night. Lori and I had spoken about the webinar and we got off, and I found out that of the millions of women the millions of people that left the workforce in September, 80% of them were women. And I said to her, I said, this is exactly why this webinar that we're doing tomorrow is so important, because we know that our lives are changing. Our roles changed overnight, and we're working through this all together. So that's the idea of our presentation tonight. Like I said, this is brought to you by the Mental Health Association of Monmouth County. This is all because of grant funding, donors. We're able to provide these types of resources directly to our communities, based off of that funding that we receive. And we are really happy to be able to do that, and we hope that you guys find this training tonight to be really worthwhile. So who are we? I want to go ahead and introduce my friend and colleague, Lori. Has over 25 years in the industry. She graduated from Catholic and George Washington University, and she worked in the American Stock Exchange. Her focus right now is really the financial education of women. She has a lot to bring to us tonight as we talk about this topic. I originally met Lori through my work in the community, part of the Two River Competent community, where we wanted to really bring mental health awareness to the Two River community and area. And so I met her through that work that we were doing there. And we felt like this would be a perfect fit to work together with the mental health component that I have and the financial and advocacy piece that she has in her community. She's a dedicated community member, and she's also a mother. I'm Nicole Nolan. Some of you guys may recognize me. I've done a lot of trainings and a lot of community work in Monmouth County through the Mental Health Association. I am their director of adolescent suicide prevention programming. I train all of the schools in your area in suicide prevention for youth as young as, unfortunately, in this day and age, kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. If you did receive this email or this flyer from your school, it's probably because your school has been trained in Lifelines and they are doing this work with the Mental Health Association of Monmouth County. I am also a school counselor. I work in one of the private schools in the area for elementary and middle school. I'm a licensed social worker, and I'm a mom. So it can really relate to you guys as we move through this presentation. So what are we going to talk about tonight? We want to talk about how the pandemic has changed the climate for all of our different roles. And what was really, really important to us in talking about all of these different things is to really understand where you guys were coming from. And I really thank you for the input that you put in for our registration process. I found, out a little bit about you guys, about what your homes look like. If you're single, if you do have children, maybe you're divorced, maybe you are working at home at the same time as your partner, your spouse, your significant other, understanding all those stressors. We are going to talk about what some of your concerns were. We definitely want to touch on planning for financial wellness. I think as we move into this second wave of COVID, as we were starting to kind of come up that curve, we're now looking at, another couple of months or, the rest of the year again, in this situation. So how do we prepare? How do we make sure that we're, financially stable during a really unstable time for our country and for the world? And then we're going to end with some tips for working, for parenting, and just overall living. This is what you guys wanted to know. So overwhelmingly, how to achieve a work-life balance. Is that even achievable at this point? That was the number one question. I think every single one of you who registered for this webinar said, I need to understand how to balance work and life. And I think it's beyond just work and life. I think work is one piece and life has become this big, huge bubble. Now life includes working from home, um, living from home, just being at home all of the time, schooling from home, um, athletics, dance, everything from home. So how do we do that? What does that balance look like? How to structure working from home and schooling from home, relationship challenges, and what is normal now? Does normal exist anymore, or is life just going to be a little bit different? So I'm going to bring Lori back on really quickly for a second. She had this really great slide that she wanted to share with us. And, we are going to get her back on here so that she can talk to us a little bit about the COVID impact that we've had. Lori?
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. First of all, before I get to the slide, I wanted to take this time to first and foremost to thank all of you for joining. In addition to that, I wanted to explain my sincere pleasure of sitting alongside Nicole, who is a true behavioral health advocate and mom who also struggles with this work-life balance, which we'll get into. And just to sincerely express my thanks and gratitude to MHA, of which I'm a foundation board member, for allowing me to speak to you today, not only about my 33-year financial career, in which work-life balance has been a part of it, or imbalance the entire 33 years. That includes time, whether it was 21 years ago when I had my first child, or that includes time when you are just, a couple with your spouse, etc. So we can get into all of the tips and in my opinion, treasured tips that I've learned from all of my mentors over my 33-year career in finance. In addition to that, I wanted to first and foremost hope that all of your families have good health, especially with what's going on. And we all understand that this is an extremely unprecedented time. Last week, I had the opportunity to attend a virtual leadership summit in which the name of the summit and the theme throughout the week was reframed to rise in 2021. That resonated with me in such a way because I realized that we all need a goal to effectively get to the next level out of this crisis. And to me, I took the time to order a book that's called This Is How We Rise. And when I read this book, I became inspired to effectively leave behind what has happened to us in 2020 and to rise, whatever that new normal may look like in 2021. We wanted to make sure that no matter what, throughout this presentation, we know what's on your mind. We know some of what's on your mind, but if anything resonates with you during this presentation, feel free to raise your hand and ask questions. We're going to start the presentation with two quotes that I found. One really is associated with the behavioral health impact of COVID-19. All of us obviously understand the physical impact, but what people don't understand is the multidimensional impact that COVID-19 has had on all of us. One being physical, one being psychological, the other being financial, and the other one being professional. And I think these two quotes, if you just read even the first line with me, the first quote is from Dr. Julianne Holt-Ludstedt, from a psychology professor at Brigham Young University. And just reading the first two lines gives you a gist of what's happened to every single person in society. It doesn't matter who you are. Just like hunger signals us to eat and thirst signals us to drink water, loneliness is thought to be a biological drive that motivates us to reconnect. Throughout human history, we've relied on others for survival, and proximity to others, particularly trusted others, signals safety. I'll stop there for a moment because what is incredible is to understand that nearly 100% of society, whether you're an individual, whether you're a couple, whether you're a child, whether you are a coworker, whether you are the elderly, or whether you are our pets, every single member of society, literally around the globe, has been impacted by this pandemic. As a result, the stress levels are so high in every part of society that it is now a crisis in its own right. As Nicole alluded to before, and this is a very, very interesting aspect of this pandemic, which is that, as Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook and co-founder of Lean In, states here, I think we should be very alarmed. I wrote in a Wall Street Journal op-ed, and I wrote, if I had an alarm bell, I would be pulling it. I'm pulling it. I mean, we kind of suspected this was going on. I think a lot of people thought, oh, maybe this is happening, but it is happening. More than 1 in 4 women, including a lot of senior women, are saying they've considered downsizing their jobs or leaving the workforce. That's a disaster that threatens to undo literally what has taken us years of progress for women in the workplace. We absolutely need to fix this and need to fix it immediately. When I think about this, I think about the financial crisis that I also endured back in '09. And as a result of that financial crisis, many women left as well. And I will tell you that it is our jobs and our obligation, no matter how hard it gets, to find a way to get to our employers and to effectively evoke change, okay, which effectively enables people to understand that the households are different, the work life is different, that our children are different, and have our employers understand what is really truly going on in the face of this pandemic. I will recommend 2 books, because throughout this presentation, I'm going to recommend tools that I think have been helpful to me. One is a book that's called Getting to 50/50, which effectively speaks to, in your household, how you can actually shift some of the balance between the people in the household, including children, including your partner, to effectively get more balance in the household. We need that more than ever. The other book is called Fair Play by Eve Rodsky, and effectively is the same concept, which is how do we get more balance in the household so that more and more of us are not driving off the career highway.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Lori. All right, so I'm going to put you back on mute and I'm going to stop your video and move back on. I just want to take a moment. I don't know about you guys, but this is one of the pieces I think that speaks so much to what we're doing here tonight and what I heard in Lori and how passionate she is in delivering this content to you. Is that we're really here tonight to empower women, whether it's through the financial piece or the mental piece, and it's all through wellness. And that's what we are trying to do. And as she was speaking about a lot of these things, as women are leaving the workforce with all of these stressors and challenges that we've gone through in the past several months, I got chills myself because I can't tell you how many times I've said, I'm going to need to take a leave of absence in order to make sure that my kids are okay. Like, I don't know how to maintain my own wellness while maintaining my kids at home and making sure that they're getting educated. And I think as mothers and as women and as problem solvers, in our hearts, our first thing is to say, sacrifice ourselves for the good of others. And I think, the quote that she said, let's ring the alarm, let's make ourselves aware of this that's going on, and let's work together collectively as a unit to say we can't leave the workforce. We've come too far and we are going to get through this crisis. And this is what this webinar is here to do tonight. So I really just hope that I can get some of these tips and tricks to you guys, and we can all work together to continue to move women forward in their careers, in their homes, and in their relationships. That being said, I want to empower you guys through wellness tonight. And COVID challenges are that we all need naps and puppies. And what do I mean when I say that? We all need these feel good moments throughout the day. I was just speaking with somebody maybe 2 or 3 minutes ago, before this webinar started, and I said to them, this situation is no longer changing day to day for people. It's changing minute to minute. There is a stressor that is probably going on in your home, whether it's an argument with your child or an argument with your spouse, or feeling lonely, or having too much work pressure, or logging off of your job at 5 o'clock to having an email by 5:20 from your boss about what you didn't finish that day or what you need to get to or something that you've forgotten. And we are so bogged down in the pressure that COVID has put on us that we're forgetting about our feel good moments. So if it's a nap for you, take a nap and don't feel guilty about it. If it's a puppy, I mean, we all know how much serotonin is released from petting an animal. That's why therapy dogs exist. We need to have these feel good moments, but as women, we need to not feel guilty about them either. We need to take those moments and do the things that we need. I'll share with you guys, the other day, between working as a school counselor and then I consult for the Mental Health Association after work, I'm putting in, extensive amounts of hours. My son is virtual learning. I have an 18-month-old daughter at home who I'm trying to wean off of some very significant separation anxiety within the past 2 weeks. And I finally said to myself, I had a babysitter that was able to come over. My mother was able to come over for a couple of minutes, and under the guise of I had to work, and I took an extra hour and I went and I got my nails done. And that may sound, deceitful to not telling anybody in my family that I did it, but I will tell you it was the best 45 minutes that I've had in the past 2 weeks because my mind was quiet. I think I watched like something on TV in the nail salon that I would have never have had, and I just kind of dozed off for a little bit, and I needed it. It was something that gave me a recharge that I feel like if I didn't do that at the beginning of the week, I wouldn't be as together right now, especially with some of the things that popped up towards the end of the week this week with what we're going through. So again, remember those feel good moments. I want you to maybe take a minute here if you have a pen or a paper and jot down some of those feel good moments that you had pre-COVID that you're really missing. I hate to make myself sound so vain, but some days I wake up and I'm like, I wish I had a haircut. I wish I had new makeup. I wish I had all of these different things that made me feel like me, but instead, everybody else is being put before me. And, some days when I wake up and I'm able to do my hair the way that I used to, or do my makeup the way that I used to, or be able to get the smoothie that makes me feel healthy in the morning when I start instead of feeling late, that's the feel good moment that I need to feel that sense of normalcy that's really been ripped from all of us for the past several months. I want you guys to remember to take it easy on yourselves. The world is in a global health emergency no one has faced ever before. So while we're all going through this and we may feel alone on our islands, we're actually in the same storm. We're just in different boats. So what that means is we're all going through this. And while you may be having issues with your relationship, I'm having issues with my kids. And the boats are a little different, but we're all in this COVID situation together. Feeling some anxiety right now is normal. I kind of almost want to go out on a limb and say, if you weren't feeling anxiety at some point during this, I would kind of almost be more concerned about the mental state that you may be in, because certainly things are starting to look a little grim again. The news is changing daily. A lot of us are afraid of what another government shutdown may look like for our businesses, for our families. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? The unexpected alone from day to day is really something that, no person can handle. And just a quick reminder, it's absolutely normal for people to regress in times of stress. So if you find yourself falling back or if you find yourself falling into old habits, don't beat yourself up over it. If this is what's getting you through this pandemic, I mean, it's okay. Again, like if you're eating a little bit more or you're doing something, you're watching a little bit more TV than you used to, as long as it's not causing any extreme amount of harm, you're okay. We're going to get through this. And my whole spiel is always trauma informed care, right? We are all in a traumatic situation right now. So, whatever it is that you need to do to get through, as long as it's a healthy coping skill that's rooted in some foundation where you know that you're getting the help or the stress relief that you need, we're good. I'm going to turn it back over to Lori. She's going to start bringing us through some of this work life balance stuff. And we're going to move into that financial piece that we spoke about early on in the presentation.
Hi, I'm back again. Okay, so I think what Nicole had talked about before is one of the questions from the audience may have been, does work-life balance, or I call it life work balance, actually exist? And the reality is it's debated quite a bit. I was, sort of the head of the work-life balance committee at Goldman Sachs over 20 years ago. And we've debated the subject for a long, long time. And those that debated it before us also have thought about this subject quite a bit. And I will tell you that in work-life balance, as it relates to COVID, here is what I've seen. I've seen that whereas maybe pre-COVID, you were able to compartmentalize your life as well as possible. Not to say it was balanced, but compartmentalize it. You felt like you could manage basically your time blocking throughout the day. However, what happened during COVID was a convergence of work-life balance, where all of a sudden that compartmentalization between these different facets of your life all came crashing together. And whereas some people actually may have found work-life balance. Maybe your spouses or whomever who don't have to get on the ferry or the boat or the train to go commute, they actually got better work-life balance. Some of us did not. And in fact, we feel the imbalance. So what I will tell you, what I've learned over many years of dealing with this, okay, when I had my children, I was fighting the Wall Street ladder, all these different things, is I realized that you fluctuate between these buckets, okay, and you got to give yourself a break. The reality is that you will fluctuate, as we said before, between which bucket is taking the priority that day. But I will tell you that the most important thing to understand is that self cannot go to zero. It cannot go to zero. Family cannot go to zero. And in many cases, because of pretty much the subject being talked about right now in our workplaces, a more empathic workplace, a more understanding of this work-life balance, a more understanding of flexible working arrangements. If in fact your work is suffering as a result of all the other things going on in your life right now, you do have the opportunity to raise your hand, as we stated before. The truth is, every day of my trading desk life, where I was sitting on a trading desk, trading for 12 hours a day, going out and entertaining clients, I literally every single day got onto the trading desk and wrote myself out exactly this chart. And I wrote in every single box, every single day, what I needed to do in each of those boxes. And if you looked at that at the end of the week, you would determine which one of the boxes took priority over the other boxes in any given week, because the list either got longer or shorter. Okay. And that's just the reality. And so I think as it relates to work-life balance, there really never is balance, so to speak. There's just a play between these different facets of your life. And in many respects, you have to pay attention to one or the other depending upon what's going on. Okay. The other thing I will tell you is time blocking. Time blocking is probably one of the most important tools I use in my toolkit. And what does that mean? It's basically saying, if I got to take 1 hour every day and make sure that that hour, as Nicole just said, was to go get my nails done, to feel like I'm taking care of self, that means that I take that hour. I don't care what it is. It could be Thursdays at 4 o'clock, but there's got to be a time block for yourself. There's got to be a time block, as we know, for family, and a time block for our community service, but also our work. And as a result of that, you'll find that if you basically build those time blocks into your day and into your schedule, you will not lose sense of self, or any of these boxes for that matter. Okay. One other tool that I will tell you that has always helped me out is I turn around and I teach this to my children and to other members of my family, which is to say, we are Krikorian Inc. Okay. At the end of the day, if we're Krikorian Inc., all of us are in this together. So if I'm going to have boundaries associated with my time block, especially given the fact that we're all under the same roof, then you're going to have respect for your time block. And it starts teaching your children and other family members that those time blocks really work for every member of the family. All right, I love this slide. I drafted this slide because I really wanted to tell some anecdotal stories, okay? How much fuel is in your tank? And the concept here being whether it's that you're a marathon runner or you're working 100 hours a week, as I used to do in investment banking, or whether it is that you are on your third child, or whether it's whatever it might be, you can run out of fuel as an individual pretty quickly, okay? I've already talked about the work-life balance, work-life imbalance subject, which is the first bullet point. But again, just the concept of making sure that you time block between those different facets of your life and realize that one may or take precedent over the other at any given moment of the day. But take stock at the end of the week. What one of those facets did you not get to the most? Okay. And that helps you make up some of the distance, but gives yourself a little bit of a break. The other thing I will tell you as a financial advisor is empowerment. I will tell you that one of the most interesting and rewarding experiences I have is empowering not only women, but also young people about finances. And why is that? That is because the financial house that your family runs, or you run as an individual, is not in order unless you know enough to be dangerous. I often say that to people. I say, if you are ignoring it completely, let's sit down and talk, and let's translate it into words and actions that are empowering to you. It is not meant to be intimidating. I trade derivatives. I trade literally complicated financial instruments, and I literally turn around and can train people on that specific aspect of my expertise in words that make sense. But when we're talking about financial empowerment, you're really talking about one thing. If we all live until we're 100 years old, you're taking the first 50 years of your life to pay for the second 50. That is that simple, which effectively means if you got to be a saver in order to pay for the second 50 of your life, you got to know what components goes into the expenses now in order to pay for your life on the second half. Okay. The next bullet point, which is driving through the Rocky Mountains solo summer 2020. I tell people this story because I think it is very impactful. I happened to have driven back from my twin sister's home in Snowmass, Colorado by myself through the Rocky Mountains. And one of the things that was interesting about that was making sure, because I didn't know where the next gas station was, that I never went below half a tank. And what I mean by that, it was very frightening to be driving through, the Vail Pass, the mountains by yourself, not knowing, am I going to actually go down to a zero tank? And what that reminds me in life is to say, don't let the tank go on empty, which is a lot of what we've been dealing with through this crisis. The next one is when the tank does run empty. And let me give you an example. A couple of weeks ago, and I live by this quote that was shared with me many years ago, you're only as happy as your most unhappy child. I had a senior in college who lost his roommate to suicide. I had my other children who lost a cousin. And my father went into the ER all in 1 week. And here I was saying to myself, I can't pay attention to my clients or my work or my community service. I need help myself. And one of the things that I can tell you that when your tank does run empty, because on occasions, things like this, the perfect storm will occur, you got to have a board of directors. And I've always had a personal board of directors. My personal board of directors includes family, friends, clergy, people that are in your life that you can literally make that phone call and say, I'm raising my hand. I cannot handle the plate I've been served. And on occasion, that happens. And I will tell you, this happened to me 2 weeks ago. And the pride that you have associated with the resiliency that comes out of those experiences is where the strength comes, especially as we've been dealing with this all the way through COVID, which is now, we are 10 months in, okay? Marathon running. Those of you who see me on Ocean Avenue, I am out there every single day, 6 miles a day. Sometimes I'm running, sometimes I'm walking, sometimes I'm barely running. But the point I'm making is that marathon running takes one thing. It takes mental and physical strength, it takes training, and it takes pace. It means that you got to finish strong. It means you got to refuel and you got to rest. Okay. And as a result of that type of training, you know that when you get to the finish line, you can't run another race unless you refuel. And I would say that COVID has been a marathon for all of us. And so you got to stand back every once in a while, pick your thing. I don't care if it's yoga or meditation or running or whatever your thing may be, but use it as your physical and mental strength to pace yourself to get through those times in which you've got to refuel and then take it back and rest. I use marathon running or running every day as one of the major tools in my toolkit because it calms me in ways that other things do not. So find the one thing that does that for you. The next thing I will say is next gen resiliency. I talked about this before. You got to turn around to your kids at some point or another, and in their own words, depending on what age they are, and say, think like an owner. Think like an owner means that we are all Krikorian Inc. in this house. We are all owners in this. Never than ever before has every member of the household felt something as it relates to this pandemic. So it is a good time to teach that concept of everybody is in this together, i.e. think like an owner. Okay, what is in my work life toolkit? I've talked about this a couple of times, but I'm going to go down the list pretty quickly. Refine my purpose. Wake up in the morning and say to myself, if I'm basically going to live until I'm 100 and I'm 55 years old, how many years do I have to write my story? It's that simple. So what's your purpose, right? Also, self-reliance. Really realizing that when you got to dig deep and you got to get yourself out of a hole, you can do it on your own. Okay. Personal board of directors is one of my key tips that was ever given to me by a mentor at Goldman Sachs, and I live by it. I have board of directors around me in my life at all times. I also suggest that young people have a board of directors. So when their parents can't talk to them, but perhaps they can talk to a coach, or they can talk to somebody that's outside of their immediate family with all this stress going on. Hire a board of directors around you for your life, people that you trust, that you can go to when things are not great. Run, walk, one, we talked about. I use it every single day as a therapy to get out the door. If stress gets high, I literally, as Nicole said before, I literally turn around and say, you know what? I literally have hit, I'm overdone for the day. I'm going out for my run, walk, run. And I do that to cut the cycle associated with all the stress. Journaling and reading, I highly suggest, if those of you feel like you don't have time to do it, even for 20 minutes a day, it really helps to kind of just stand back and take that self time. The other thing I will tell you is that I am not afraid. I tell people quite often, speak up, reach out. When you're hitting those low points, those stressors, those triggers, all of those things that create the panic, the anxiety, and the uber stress that's going on, you got to speak up and you got to reach out. And that is part and parcel of what MHA does with respect to end the stigma. It's healthy to speak out and speak up. This was a favorite one from the summit that I had attended last week virtually, which was Have a Tribe. And this talks about the reconnection to all of us as people, which effectively humanity only survives if we live within the context of people. So don't give up your tribe, whether it's your family, whether it's your schoolmates, whether it's your teammates. The other thing is empathy. Empathy is becoming more and more of a mainstream concept, especially in our workplace and especially among us. We should understand that every single person who's gone through this pandemic for 10 months has really gone through it slightly differently. So just empathizing with how people may be going through this or not. The other thing is giving back. And I think all of us probably at some point in our lives have give back to a cause that we really care about. And it actually is a healer when you can find the time to give back to your community. Okay, we're going to get a little bit into the financial piece. Okay, 95% of you here today will be your family's primary financial decision maker at some point in your life. The average life expectancy for a woman is 81 years old young versus 76-year-old for men. Are you prepared? Meaning that women on average statistically outlive men. Therefore, you will become the person who drives your financial picture later on in your life, if not now. Okay, there's basic principles associated with financial planning. And so whether you are in your household and you're the person who runs the finances, or whether you're the person who's not, this is not rocket science. I say to people all the time, I grew up on Wall Street. I've been there since I'm 19 years old. I sat there with all the traders and all the people that talked all the jargon on CNBC and all that for so long. But financial planning is really, really simple. It really starts with getting things organized. Get your financial house in order. It talks about the things that protect your family. Okay, so when you talk about begin with the basics, you're talking about get organized, get a financial plan. It means what dollars come in, what dollars are coming in to effectively pay for those expenses, what is left over in order to pay for your future. Okay, the other thing is protecting your family, which is not only handing that money off as a legacy in the future, or protecting your family in the context of what happens if something happens within your household, including a will, a power of attorney, or a healthcare proxy. I was in Monmouth Medical last week, and I basically have had the power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and living will of my father in my bag for the last 2 weeks. And it is empowering to know that all of that has been taken care of long before you need it. He happens to be 88 years old and he's lived an amazing life. But the reality is people need to get that piece of their financial house in order long before you go through having children and other events in your life. In addition to that, we talk about sort of what are the importance of the values your family has, because the values that you basically want to hand off to your next generation, your children, and the next generation really means a family mission statement. What does your family stand for, and what do you want your legacy to stand for? And start teaching those values to your kids now, or with you and your partner. Planning for the future really is that financial plan, which effectively means inputs, right? Your inputs is how much are you spending, how much you're taking in, how much is left over to be saved. And therefore, when you establish those financial goals down the road, we know how much money you need in order to pay for your retirement down the road. Like I said before, consider your family dynamics. There's many things that go into these types of financial plans, including whether somebody has a higher priority about education, somebody has a higher priority about life insurance, someone has higher priority for a charitable gift to their university. So consider your family dynamics, and therefore that financial plan gets built in that context, very customized for your family. Okay. Consider the impact that wealth may have on future generations. Principle number 5. By instilling responsible money values in children in our lives, we can guard against the potentially negative consequences of wealth. Okay. So, for example, when children or young people down the road may inherit wealth or not, the question is, you can teach them very small money lessons now. Okay. And what that means is when they get their first job, you say, look, for every dollar that you save this after this summer job, I'll match it. Okay, something as simple as that. Okay, starting from when they're 5 years old. It incentivizes them to save because they know that at the end of the summer, you're going to match that dollar. Okay, that's just a simple example. Principle number 6, make a place for philanthropy in both your family and your legacy. And what that simply means is, which universities did you go to? Which charitable causes do you care? And make sure that everyone in the household has an opportunity to participate in that. So both members get to determine where you may want to give away philanthropic dollars. And therefore, a family values is being constructed around the concept of giving. The other thing I'll say is stay informed and engaged. And I will, in the next slides, we're going to get into how you actually discuss these things. If you happen to be someone who's single, or you happen to be in a partnership or a couple, how do you actually start the conversation on financial planning if you don't happen to be involved now? Okay, so basically we talked about some of these, but some of it is sort of, again, just the concept of cash management. We have cash, how many dollars are being saved, and do we basically have a right proportion between expenses and what we're saving? In addition to that is basically saying to ourselves, if in fact you're going to go with the mantra that I live until I'm 100 years old, and I basically have to use the first part of my life to fund the second part of my life, okay, you've got to start be thinking about the liquidity flows in your household. Okay, and we'll get to like, how do you facilitate those conversations? The other thing is create and maintain an emergency fund. I will tell you that through COVID, and I can remember the day, it was around March 12th, okay, that the entire world literally went on fire as it related to the stock market. And what happened was there was a lot of people that did not have emergency liquidity, which effectively meant that every single asset class in the entire trading world went down on the same day. That means that people are starting to sell when everything is on fire. What you really want to do is say, hey, these are my expenses for 6 months, and therefore maintain an emergency fund of liquidity that's sitting on the sidelines so that you have access to that if, God forbid, you have a world that's sort of a little bit topsy-turvy, which is what happened in March. Look into the next few months. Look at savings goals. Look at places where you can save a little money and start saving away those dollars. And what I say to people is, look, put yourself as a line item in that expenses. In other words, you know you got to pay for your car and your house and whatever else you may have, but put yourself as one of those savings goals, okay? The other thing is understanding the basics of investing. What has always been interesting to me is when women say to me, hey, by the way, Laura, how do I get started? I said, I'm happy to sit down and talk to you. You know why? Because all you have to do is start the conversation about questions you may have about the investment world. And all of a sudden, anybody who has the ability to communicate to you in simple terms can start to teach you the basics of investing. Okay, so why are women saving less? Well, sometimes they earn less, and this is getting better, but in many cases, as we've seen through COVID, if we're going to have 80% of the people that have left the workforce be women, then there you go. Women are either A, potentially not earning as much, but in addition to that, maybe driving off of the workforce, which is bullet point number 2. In the other way, we're also, women aren't making their money work. What does that mean? That if you do take your assets in from work or inheritance or whatever else, you've got to make that money work for you. Because if you take that dollar today, by virtue of inflation, you're losing money tomorrow. So that money has to work for you in order for it to generate enough to pay for the second half of your life. Okay. So that gets back to the investment piece. You don't want all those dollars to be sitting under a mattress earning zero. You want those dollars to be working for you. And depending upon your time horizon and depending upon your goals, it tells us where those dollars should be invested. The stock market being much more risky than, for example, the bond market or in cash. So we basically customize that allocation of your dollars. But at the end of the day, we never want to see somebody sitting 100% in cash. Okay, so this is one of my favorite slides because basically what this does is it helps people think about how to frame the conversation. Many people say to me, I don't even know how to start the conversation with my partner or my spouse or whatever it might be. I say, okay, make a money date for yourself or with your spouse or partner. This gets back to the time block. Financial discussions, especially during COVID and with all the stuff that's going on, can often be stressful. So the point being is that what if you just basically time blocked 1 hour a week? It's not date night. Keep date night away from this. This becomes your financial date night, okay? Either your date night with yourself or with your partner, but effectively 1 hour a week, 1 hour a week that you and your partner or you by yourself literally time blocks for your financial goals, okay? And that's taking a notebook, writing down your goals, figuring out your expenses, and figuring out how much you got to save, okay? When we talk about, asking questions among spouse or partners is basically, again, standing back and saying, look, we're Krikorian Inc. At the end of the day, the whole house doesn't run unless we all are informed enough. Okay. Creating a budget together is really kind of, in my opinion, I've seen this happen where it's pretty much like a freeing experience where a couple comes together and writes their budget together, because then everybody's on the same page. Okay. And in a weird way, it creates a lot less stress. Listen to each other. Maybe somebody has a goal to pay for college and the other one says, no, they're getting loans. Maybe it is that you plan on traveling a lot when you're in your 60s and the other one says, no, we're going to buy a boat. But either way, there has to be a discussion of what both people, if it happens to be a couple, care about. If you're by yourself and you have individual goals, think about which ones are your priorities, right? Do I have to have the boat? Do I have to go to Italy? What do I have to do? And which ones are my priority? The other thing is legacy. So if you are fortunate enough to have dollars left over in your lifetime, you want to make sure that those values, okay, are communicated through those trust and estate documents that I talked about earlier off to your next generation. Talk about mistakes. Believe me, every single person that I've ever talked to has made a mistake somewhere along the line, and you learn from them and you move on. Okay, family tips. We're talking about things that matter, especially to women. Women are always the ones who are standing there saying, how are we going to pay for college? And how are we going to pay for our life insurance? How are we going to pay for health insurance? These are things that basically we all care about. So this is an easy way to start the conversation about finances, which is to say, let's look at how much college is going to cost. We can compute like in 20, in 10 years from now, how much college is going to cost. And you start to save early and you set the goals associated with saving for college. Okay. In addition to that, life insurance. Life insurance, as we all know, especially through the pandemic, is making sure that you have that safety guard around your family. If something happened to you or something happened to your spouse, what a life insurance is used pretty much to replace that income that went away. And you're basically doing that so both family members, okay, are aware of the risk associated with not having that safety net around the family. The other thing that's talked about a lot is health insurance, which again, you would have that through your employer, but the other thing is long-term care, which effectively means that in your lifetime, as you get older, you want to take account of what those expenses could be. So oftentimes people plan very well, but in the later part of life, they need to have that boost at the end to pay for either in-home care or nursing home or et cetera. So just that's, again, another consideration. The most important thing is to understand that expenses over your lifetime change, right? So, for example, let's say you're doing a lot of traveling now, but when you hit your 70s, 80s, 90s, you might not be doing a lot of traveling, but therefore those expenses over your lifetime may change. So, you might basically take a financial plan and say, Lori, assume that I'm going to spend this in my 50s, this in my 60s, this in my 70s, and this in my 80s. And therefore, we say, okay, this is what the asset pool looks like to pay for those expenses over your lifetime.
Okay, I am coming back now to talk a little bit more about some of this mental health and behavioral health piece. I want to thank Lori for her part here. I think that was a really good overview of everything that we should be looking for right now and what we should be doing. And I think it fits really, really nicely with a couple of the next things that I'm going to talk about as it relates to our mental wellness. Okay, so here we go. We are moving right along to relationship challenges. And I want to start this off with this quote that I heard probably about 2 weeks ago. And I think it spoke to so much of what we're experiencing right now. And it said, as women, we are always juggling. We have a million balls in the air. And to think that one of them isn't going to fall is completely naive at this point, especially during COVID. The difference is recognizing which of those balls are made of plastic and which of those balls are made of glass. And that really opened up a lot of things for me. What that did particularly was it made me realize that my type A ways and personality are not really suited to get me through a pandemic. So I needed to recognize what in my life were the plastic balls and what I could let go of, and what were the glass balls that I needed to hold on to a little bit more, and what were really probably my own core values as a person, as a woman, as a mother, as a social worker, as just who I am at my core. And I found out that instead of the 100 balls that I thought I had in the air, there was probably really only 5 or 6 that were so critical to me that I had to worry about, and my stress really decreased. So I want to encourage you guys to evaluate that piece of yourself and say, what are some of the things that I can start letting fall every now and again? Those plastic balls have resiliency. They have a little bit of bounce. So if you drop them, it's going to be okay. But those glass ones are not. So, relationship challenges. What are we seeing right now in COVID? Maintaining roles and peace in my relationships, my marriage. Maybe your date, you began to date at the beginning of this. Maybe you went through a breakup during this. Certainly different things have changed. Quarantining from loved ones and significant others. This is getting really, really, complicated, especially as we move into a time where they're looking to have us quarantine for compatible symptoms instead of just if we've been exposed to somebody who's tested positive. Being away from the person or people we love, again, people who support our family systems. I cannot tell you how hard it was for me in the beginning of this when I was immediately thrown into a remote work from home scenario. My husband is an essential employee, so he was still getting up at 4:30 in the morning every day. I had to have my son on the computer by 5 o'clock, by 8 a.m. And he was in kindergarten. And at that point, I had an almost 1 year old who was no longer going to daycare. That being said, I still was, in charge of the mental wellness of a lot of my students, and I needed to check in with them as well. So it was lending a lot of my energy and a lot of myself to other people. And I had no support to come over and watch the kids for an hour. I had nobody to come over and help me. Um, kind of get through some of the schoolwork with my son. It was all on my shoulders. And that was basically, what I was going through at that point. So these are a lot of the things that maybe you guys have felt and some of the things that you've gone through. And I want to point out now at this point in the webinar, we've really gone through a lot of content. I want to encourage you to go ahead and start chatting. Send in your questions, anything that you may have for me or Lori as we're moving through this, any of the things that you may think were excellent. Maybe you want us to, go on a little bit more, anything that you think we're missing. We really love to have an interactive webinar. We have a decent amount of you guys on here tonight, and that's really exciting. So from what we've talked about already, let us know what you think and what else you want to pick our brains about. right? And then the other piece of this, which I left for the very last piece, is, those people who are still single and wanting to date and not being able to do so and not being able to make those connections, and what that kind of does for us, and that piece that Lori spoke about earlier, that loneliness in that quote that everybody is going through at this point. And certainly I have friends who are really, reaching out to me as their board of directors, as Lori said, and saying, I really can't handle being alone anymore. And I was miserable about it before COVID. And now, I can't even go out on a date, or I can't go to a bar on a Friday night and try to meet somebody. What is this going to look like? I want to get my life started. I want to find a partner. All of those types of things are challenges that we're going through right now. How can we support our homes? What does your home look like currently? I want to bring up a couple of the things that we've talked about on other webinars before. And the first one pertains to families. And we have changing traditions. And we just went through the first holiday, one of the first big ones in COVID, where it's colder weather and we can't celebrate the way that we would have before. I'm talking about Thanksgiving. We're moving into a holiday season here. And whether you are a mother or a wife or a girlfriend or a partner or, any type of person, certainly you have a family system, and in that family system, you have very long held traditions that maintain a sense of identity for who you are and for who your family is. And this year, those are certainly going to look different. So I encourage you to include your children, include your family members, include your parents, siblings, and say, this year is different. How do we make it still feel somewhat normal? Include people in that conversation. Talk to your group of friends, talk to your board of directors. Try to hold on to the traditions that really make us who we are. I said this before in so many words, but we have to lower our expectations. We have to. And I want to remind you, and this was something that really came through with your responses on your registration. How am I to be sure that my kid is going to be okay at the end of this? And what I want to remind everybody is that an entire cohort of children are experiencing the very same thing at the very same time. So if you are concerned about your kids getting into college, they are with a pool of kids who went through exactly the same thing. If you are worried about your child moving on to high school or hitting academic milestones, they are in a grade that are experiencing the same exact thing. Our world is going to have to adapt a little bit after this, and we are going to see the effects of what COVID has done to women in the workplace, to our kids' education, to a number of things. But what we can expect is that the baseline for performance has changed, and reassure ourselves that their pool of peers is going through the very same thing. I want to remind you guys to be okay not spending every single minute together. I spoke about this on my last webinar, and I think it really resonated with a lot of parents, because you go on Facebook and you see these pictures of what the perfect family looks like in quarantine, and everybody looks happy and they're having family game night, or they're going on, 5-hour car rides to stay socially distanced to go somewhere. And you look at these pictures and you say, I can't even get through the day homeschooling them. I can't do this. I can't do that. How is this family so perfect? And it's not. And a family that spends every single minute together is not a healthy, functioning family. We need to allow our children, our partners, our spouses, ourselves to have independent time. So by lowering that and saying, if we're quarantining, we're together 100%, we don't need to do that. I certainly don't do it with my 6-year-old. He has his independent time, and I'll talk about this in a little bit more with structured and unstructured time and what that means in our house. But as a parent, do not judge the way that you're performing or how you are as a parent by what you see on social media and what you see other people doing. If your family is happy and your family is healthy, that's all that matters. Family theme nights. So this was something that came up again in our last parent presentation that we did, and parents really, really enjoyed this idea of having family theme nights. And if you have teenagers or middle schoolers, you know that they live and die right now by TikTok. Everything is TikTok, everything is a challenge, everything is a video. They're doing dances in your hallways, they're doing dances on your front lawn. TikTok is life. And one of the things that they have on there is a family challenge. And the family challenge is where family has a dinner, but they invite every family member to come dressed as a person from their family. So you put everybody's name in a hat. Youngest brother comes as mom, sister comes as dad, like everybody just kind of takes on their own personas. And it's great for a couple of reasons because A, the kids are involved because they just want to go viral, right? So you have their buy-in right there. Then on top of it, you really get to see how your family views you and yourself, and it's therapeutic, right? And you're getting good quality time where you're probably laughing, like belly laughs. Like I could imagine being 16 and my mom saying, "Okay, Nicole, like you're going to come home dressed like dad." And me getting dressed up in, this big Italian suit and coming home and eating super sad and prosciutto and, whatever because we're Italian and just being like wild and crazy with it, or having my brother come and dress as me with my car keys, pretending that I want to go out all the time. So it's just really a great way to bond the family closer and just have a really good laugh. And the kids really enjoy it. And there's other ones too. There's, some TikToks about games and things that are all home and quarantined. So they want to do this stuff because it's what their peers are doing or what, some influencers are doing online. And it's really good quality family fun. Active listening. I want to talk to you guys about this for a couple of minutes because as we've tried to model here tonight, empathy is really a piece that is up and up and coming, right? It's had its time and it's here, and it's different from sympathy, right? Sympathy is just us feeling bad for somebody else, but empathy is really kind of going down into that well with the other person and sitting in that darkness with them. And when somebody is that dark, somebody loses somebody or somebody is such in an anxious place, nothing that you say is going to make it better. So if your kids are really upset about missing out on basketball season or, that sports were pushed back again until January, nothing that you say is going to fix that. But being able to tell them, I'd say, I hear that you're really upset. Why don't you tell me more? That active listening. As parents and as women, we are so set on problem solving. So we hear a kid or we hear a friend or we hear a spouse or a partner in pain. The first thing we want to jump to is how do we solve this problem? But right now, there are a lot of problems that are unsolvable. But that doesn't mean that people are alone. And we reframe that for them by asking them to tell us more and letting them know that no matter what it is that they're going through, we are here with them. And we use those joining words, we. This is the point in time where it's okay to spend a lot of time together. And instead of I'm going to do this for you, I am going to figure this out. It's we are going to do this together. Family meetings, I want to bring it back to what I said about being okay with not spending every minute or time together. You have structured and your unstructured time. So just like, Lori said about Krikorian Inc., what you're going to do is you're going to set up time with your family. I know as you guys have teens and middle schoolers who want to go out and want to see their friends and want to go places, that maybe that's not what you agree with. And they come to you and they say every single day, can I go with my friends? No. Here is the days during the week that I expect for us to have family time. Here's the days during the week that is unstructured time. So if you want to go out with your friends, maybe these are the times that you can do it. Maybe as we get closer, you guys have some vulnerable people in your home and you don't want your children or you don't want people that are living in your home, kind of going out and spending time, unless they're socially distanced. This is really how you set up that structure within your house. I always like to reinforce three key words that we discuss when we talk about, supporting families and supporting individuals is support, control, and structure. Everybody in a time, this is 100% based on crisis intervention theory. What this tells us is that support, control, and structure is the only way that people are able to get through a crisis without trauma. So the more structure, the more support, and the more control that you put in place makes people feel safe. It's all based off of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We can't get to the higher things, the self-actualization, if we're not feeling safe at the very bottom. So you tell your kids, this is the structure for the week. This is what I expect. These are the appointments that we're going to have. This is the virtual learning that we're going to do. This is the tutoring. This is the this. This is the that. If you don't have kids and you're at home and you have a spouse or a partner who's living with you, even if they're not living with you, This is what my week looks like. Here's the pieces where I can be available. It's all about that work life imbalance piece that we talked about in the very beginning, and looking at that chart and saying, where is the time for me and where is the time for the other pieces? And you model this for your kids and you give it to them too, because kids thrive on structure. The tell me more piece that I just went over, that's the control and the support. They feel more in control when they're able to talk openly, and that support is there and they know that they can go to you whenever you need it. At the end of the day, remember, structure organizes chaos and provides control. Helpfulness counteracts helplessness. I was talking about this yesterday. As we move through this, our kids, ourselves, our spouses, our partners, people at some point are going to feel helpless about what it is that we're going through. The best way in a behavioral aspect to address it is by being helpful. Whether that means that you're helping somebody around in their house. I will tell you, my 6-year-old was really having a bad couple of weeks, with the change in structure with school. And I thought to myself, this is the time for chores and an allowance. And I will tell you, it was a world of difference in this kid, to the point that he came to me last week and gave me his allowance money back and said, "It's not about money, mom. It's about feeling like I'm a piece of something." And that was pretty profound for a 6-year-old. Helpfulness always counteracts helplessness. So you always build somebody up back that way. There's so many ways that we can get involved in our communities at a safe distance right now. Everybody is looking for help and support. So even if you guys, want to reach out and see what the Mental Health Association is doing or anything else, we are here to accept volunteers, to give out help, donations, everything. There's all different types of community partners that we have. JBJ Soul Kitchen, all different types of agencies in our area that can really help some people feel helpful during such a helpless time. Self care doesn't have to take hours. Like I said before, a lot of the things that we went through tonight, you guys may be feeling skeptical about. Maybe you feel like you don't have the money to save right now. And I used to feel the same exact way, or I used to feel the same exact way about not taking time for myself. That is a stunted mindset. A growth mindset says, I absolutely need to do this. I need to sit down. I need to make the Excel sheet. I need to see where this money's going. I need to see where I can save. If it's $5, anything that you can do gets you moving forward. It also makes you feeling better about yourself. Structure that family time, structure your self time. Let your kids know when you're not available. Figure out a way that that message comes across, 8 to 9 a.m., mommy's having her coffee and she's watching whatever show, whatever news is on in the morning. Maybe 8 o'clock at night, your Bravo show comes on. Whatever it is that you are into, let your kids know ahead of time, because you need that boundary as well. Stop trying to be so positive all the time. It's okay to be down. Surprise yourself and remember that laughter is the best medicine. So I always like to end kind of on this piece. In quarantine, we watched a lot of Frozen in my house, and I thought that it was absolutely hysterical that at this point in the movie, Arendelle, everybody had just been run out, that nobody has homes anymore, nobody knows what's going on. Is a storm coming? Is life over as we know it? And you have Olaf, who's literally being manipulated by all these kids. They're taking off his arms, they're taking off his feet, they're giving him icicle beards and all this different stuff. And one of the characters looks at him and was like, "Buddy, you okay?" And just very calmly takes a big deep breath and says, "We're calling this controlling what you can when things feel out of control." And it all goes back to that crisis intervention theory that I spoke to you guys about. Support, control, and structure. Let go of the things that you can't control. Control what you can and what you need to. Remember what those balls are made of glass. And remember that those plastic balls are resilient and they're going to be okay if you drop them every now and again. I'm going to bring Lori back here to join me for the last couple of minutes so that we can answer some questions and, kind of come in here with our parting thoughts. Lori, you want to share?
Okay, I've reiterated this before and I'm sort of dating myself, but over 33 years as a professional and 21 years as a mom, I'm most proud of the resiliency learned and shared with others. Check in often with yourself to make sure you're mentally, physically, and financially strong. We can all reframe to rise in 2021 together. And I'll just tell you that although, and we talk about this quite a bit, you know, people that have gone through COVID and gone through these 10 months, there's not one person I know whose life is perfect right now. And so anybody who looks that way or looks like they're getting through this crisis that way, it's not true. So 100% of us are all sort of in this boat right now, some doing better than others, but I absolutely believe that we're almost getting to the end of this. And so I look forward to just keeping in touch. And anybody who has any questions for me, whenever, please reach out.
Yeah. And my parting thought was that this time has really been bittersweet. I mean, some of the most stressful moments of my life as a woman and as a mother has been a result of quarantine. I've been homeschooling and working from home. And on the other hand, some of my most precious moments with my two children have been during this time and with my husband. And I feel like I was blessed a little bit. You know, I had my daughter who was in daycare, and I had a good couple of months where I got to watch her grow as an infant and really get that bonding time with her. But what I've learned is that I have to let go. I have to let go and I have to have peace. And that's really my message to you guys is, you know, I've had so many situations where I've said in the morning, again, I'm type A, we have to be on time. We have to be on time. We have to be on time. And one of my friends saw that I was so stressed out about it. She said, "What is it gonna take you to realize that you can be late from time to time? Is it worth the family fight in the morning? Is it worth you coming to work in tears because, you know, you weren't here the 10 minutes early like you used to be?" I learned that I had to let go, and the quality of life here in my home really, you know, kind of came up. So we do have, you know, some questions coming through. The first one, you know, I can certainly relate to. You know, our kids going through virtual learning is not, you know, the situation the most ideal. And I can speak to this on one hand as a school counselor, and I can also speak to this on part of being a mother and being a mother to a child who was in kindergarten, you know, during virtual learning. I'm very open about the fact that, you know, I work with kids and that struggle, you know, with learning disabilities and things of that nature. And my own son, you know, struggles with impulsivity and attention. And virtual learning really was a struggle for him. And we found that he was having a lot of emotional outbursts. We were having, you know, really decreased self-esteem. And just really kind of a tapping out at the end of the day from the work. And I remember one day specifically, he looked at me and he said, "Mommy, I love you, but I want to know when you're going to stop being my teacher because you're really not that good of a teacher." And it was eye opening for me because I wasn't being that good of a teacher. You know, I was rooted in trying to get him to get this work done so that I could get my work done. And I started to actively involve him in the planning. And I let him know what was coming each and every day. And I said, "This is what we're going to do. And this is where we're going to take a break. And what is it going to be something that makes you happy during this day? We have to get this type of work done today. So we have to get this math worksheet done and we have to get this writing done. And that's what we absolutely have to do. But what is something that you want to do at the end of the day?" And once I started doing that tell me more, where he would have these big emotional outbursts, I would walk away. I would let him have his big feelings and I would come back and I would say, "Tell me now that we're calm, tell me more about that big feeling. What were you upset about?" And it's usually frustration. They are very, very frustrated at this point in time. They want to be with their friends, they want to socialize. Really do strive at this age developmentally to, you know, impress their teachers, but when their teachers are also their parents and also, you know, the people who are responsible for their consequences and punishments, that's really confusing for them to understand in their role. So, you know, I understand, you know, kind of, you know, what it is that you're going through. And I would bring it back to that support, control, and structure. You know, what support does your kid need? Involve them, ask that question outright, what it is that is making them so frustrated. What else is something that you can do during the day to help support them? But then also letting them know, like, yes, this is kind of what our world is right now. But we're gonna get through this, you know, together there. So I've walked that walk with you guys. One of the things that I'm going to do after this is over, we are going to send you kind of a questionnaire afterwards, what you guys thought about us, you know, is there anything additional that you felt we should cover? Should we do this again? I will provide a copy of the recording in case there's any information you guys want to go back on, but I am going to include a link to some of our other parent presentations that we've done before. We did do one specifically for teenage parents about 2 weeks ago, which was really well attended. And we are planning on doing another one specifically for elementary and middle school parents. Let me see, we have one more question. Yep. So that seems to be about it for tonight. I want to thank you again, guys, for coming in. I always like to close with just kind of talking about the Mental Health Association and the resources that we have available to you. We do have an outpatient, we do have outpatient services at MHA that you guys can call and you guys can meet telehealth, or I'm sure that we're going to be moving to in person at some point in the future as well, and kind of doing that work. And you can reach out and get a therapist that way. We do have adolescent therapists, for specifically who've worked with kids very young all the way up to 24. And then we have our adult therapists as well. We have the Family Crisis Intervention Unit, which is, ideally for parent-child conflict. So if you would like somebody to come out to your house and kind of case manage and work through parent-child conflict, they are also able to provide an individual wraparound therapist for your child. It's short-term therapy, again, crisis intervention type work. I was a wraparound therapist when I first started, so it's a really, really great program, and we have a lot of success working with kids. And there's a piece there about school truancy and kind of getting them through what it is that they need to do with school. So certainly something that maybe you guys would look into during this time. Lori, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we get wrapped up with tonight?
It was well said and perfectly stated. And I feel like two of my passions in life is three. One is being a mom for sure. Two is my advocacy of behavioral health and mental health, which I think is the kingpin to any family or any person's life. And then thirdly is just, again, empowering people financially. So if anybody ever wants to reach out to me, please feel free to do so. Nicole has my contact information.
Yep, and you guys all have that email where I sent you the link to tonight. You can contact me directly there. I thank you again. I hope that this was worthwhile. You guys got some really good tips and tricks on how to, help out in your homes and with your work and with your finances. Maybe we'll see you soon on another parent presentation, but thank you again for making the time to come and meet with us tonight. Bye, everybody.